Unmasking the gray area. When does too much cross the line into unhealthy territory? In a world filled with varying shades of gray, it can be challenging to determine when too much of something becomes detrimental to our well being. Join us as we dive deep into the intricate realm of anything with Kari esteemed guest expert Kari Schwear. I'm sorry I mispronounced that. Unraveling the mystery behind that elusive threshold where moderation turns into excess. Discover the signs, explore the consequences, and gain valuable insights to navigate the fine line between a healthy balance and an unhealthy obsession. Don't miss out on unmasking the hidden dangers lurking within the gray areas of excessiveness. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. I'm excited to share our guest with you today. Kari Schwear is an executive lifestyle coach specializing in the many gray areas we have in our lives. Her zone of genius is in habit creation, communication, leadership development, and intentional living by design. As a former gray area drinker, Kari founded Gray Tonic and the Question the Drink movement in 2018 after her own experience of living in the gray. It led her to the service of others and offers bespoke coaching for business leaders seeking wellness, performance, and better relationships without alcohol. Kari has also co-authored 2 books, The Successful Mind, Tools for Living a Purposeful, Productive, and Happy Life, along with her second, a Wall Street best-selling book, Limitless. Now, I'm excited to present her to you today. Please help me welcome Kari.
Thank you so much, April. I love that introduction. Thank you. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. It is great to have you on the show. You really specialize in gray area. So I definitely want to let the audience know all about that. What is that? But let's start beginning with you. Can you share with the audience a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I'll say that I'm a very happily married woman for 34 years. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and my life, pretty much my entire life, was in a gray area for many, many years. It wasn't until I had come to my own enough, as I call it, that got me out of the gray. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. But where I'm at now, compared to where I was even just 7, 8 years ago, is a complete different person. And so I love transformation. I love seeing people grow. It is my life and my passion and why I do what I do today. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. And I'm a mom. I have 2 grown sons and 3 fur babies.
Oh my gosh, that in and of itself, when we care for others, is so many lessons in life that you can't compare to. So
Yeah.
let's talk about what gray areas are. What do you mean by that? What are some of the examples of that?
Yeah. So the gray areas, there's many gray areas that we have in our life. And it is any place where there is complacency, mediocrity, confusion, fogginess, muddiness. And some of those gray areas are with our habits. For me, one of those gray areas was my drinking, my relationship with alcohol. I was
Mm,
not an alcoholic. I did not identify as alcoholic, but I was definitely drinking more than a social drinker. And about 50% of the population that consumes alcohol may be in this gray area. And there's this wide spectrum of drinkers. So I fell into this gray area, but I didn't know what I was. And that was part of my process and in my transformation that happened when I said I had my own enough. I came to a place where I realized I needed to address that relationship with alcohol. But another common gray area that we have, April, is in our relationships. And I see
Mm.
this so often with my clients as well. Again, that was another big gray area for me and my long term marriage. I've been married 34 years now. And about 4 years ago, in our 30th year of marriage, we came to a place where we felt like we were living as roommates. We started drifting
Mm.
apart. And this happens frequently, especially in long term relationships. So, gray area in a relationship can look like there's not much communication, there's distance between you, you're acting as roommates, like I mentioned before. There tends to be maybe an eye wandering outside of the marriage. That could be another gray area. And of course, we can
Mm.
have a gray area with our health where we have something going on, but we're ignoring it. We are not looking at the truth and we're brushing it over and we keep pushing it off to the side and we're not dealing with it. We also can have a gray area in our career where, we feel like we're handcuffed to a specific job, or even if we're a business owner. My goodness, I see this all the time where business owners, particularly who mostly I work with anyway, but business owners tend to get so attached to their business and that becomes their identity. And then
Mm.
when it comes to a point of they don't feel so connected anymore to that business, then they don't know what to do because their whole life they have spent building this business. But this can happen with anybody. It doesn't matter what the business choice is or the career. We can find a gray area in our career as well. And lastly, spirituality is another place where we can feel that
Mm.
grayness, where we just aren't sure where we should be placing our attention. We feel very disconnected from a higher power, from God, from spirit, whatever you want to call your higher power. But for me, it's God. So we can have gray areas in any one of those places. So it affects many, many parts of our life. And it's any place that we're just not paying attention to where we need to be start paying attention to more often.
Yeah, it sounds to me like these are areas where we kind of have this feeling or this nudge of something's not quite in alignment. And
Yes.
so, Carrie, what was it like for you? Let's give your story as an example of how long did it take you to start really paying attention to it? And when did you decide to start doing something differently?
Yeah. Well, most of my life, I felt like it was happening to me, not for me. We've heard that statement before, but it's very true. I just went through life kind of willy-nilling it, if you
Mm.
will. Get up, go to work, come home, make dinner, watch TV, go to bed, repeat, rinse, repeat, right?
Yeah.
It was the same old all the time. And there wasn't any intention. There was no intentionality to my life. I just sort of allowed life to happen, which far too often is what we see with a lot of people. We see that
Yeah.
they're just living a life of this is all there is. This is as good as it'll get. This is just how it's going to be. It's a whole mindset of let me just do life. We've been taught to believe we go to school, we go to college, we get a degree, we get a job, we work until we retire, and then and only then can we be happy. And that's not
Mhm.
the case at all. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about talking about the gray areas that we have, because I want to wake people up. I want
Yeah.
them to feel the passion for life. I want them to move out of those gray areas and into a life of vivid color where they're not wearing a mask or a veil over their face, that they actually can see what's in front of them. And for me, it started with my career. I was so unhappy. I've had 7 careers. I like to call myself a 7-time career path conqueror because I've gone through so many careers. But
Yeah.
that was part of it. Then that led to my drinking. And my drinking was a way for me to mask the unhappiness that I was
Yeah.
feeling inside.
Unsatisfied with yourself,
Yeah.
feeling like, I don't know actually where I belong. If you're going through different career fields that
Yes.
you feel like, first off, I feel like we identify too much into something, but yet sometimes I feel like we can feel definitely a lack of.
Yes, very much so, very much so. And then when we don't know where we belong, that's a really good point. We're sort of in limbo. So we can
Yeah.
also think of the gray areas as being in limbo. We're not quite sure what side of the fence we belong on. We're stuck in the middle. We're in that
Yeah.
gray. It's not black, it's not white. We're just not sure where we belong. So from there led for me personally on the drinking front, which I know a lot of people this can happen to, where we think it's very normal.
Mm,
Again, society has taught us it's okay to come home and have a glass of wine with dinner, and then have a glass of wine while you're preparing dinner, and then have a glass of wine after dinner. And well, your
mhm.
husband's doing it, or your wife's doing it, or your friends, on the weekend. And it becomes very social, and
Yeah.
it's just part of our way of doing things in life. And not that drinking, it's not for me. And obviously I'm a proponent of not consuming alcohol, but I'm not on a crusade against alcohol. What I am on a crusade for is for people to not remain complacent, for them to feel as though they're living with intention, that their life has purpose, and to get them out of being stuck. And I know we use that term a lot, especially in the coaching world, like, let me get you unstuck. But truly, it feels like you're just stuck in this mud and you
Mm,
don't know how to get out of it. And
yeah.
so that is my plea for everyone to know is you don't have to stay there. You don't have to accept it that way.
Yeah, we don't. And that's absolutely correct. So you definitely started seeing some warning signs that maybe you were consuming too much, or
Mhm.
you realized that this is a coping mechanism. And so now that I realize I have this coping mechanism, what else can I do? So what were some of the things that you started working on slowly? Because I know that it's some of us are able to do that cold turkey and just stop and
Mhm.
transition right away and start elevating immediately. And I would say for the most part, most people do not move that fast. It is a very slow process. So what was it like for you, Carrie?
Yes, great question. Well, because drinking was the most prominent gray area that I had in my life, I didn't know where to turn, April. I mean, it was interesting to me because I was that person, like a lot of people that start to drink too much. I'm Googling in the browser, am I an alcoholic? How much is
Hmm.
too much? Like, how do I
Yeah.
know when I'm drinking too much? What do I do? Like, I didn't know where to turn. And without having anybody like myself back then, right? This was in 2016. I believe there were people out there, but I didn't see them. I couldn't find them. I didn't know where to turn. So I went the traditional route. And I say traditional because it's the most well known outlet, which is Alcoholics Anonymous.
Mhm.
And I went to AA, and I thought it was an amazing program. It's a great resource for many people. It's helped a lot of people, but it wasn't a good fit for me. I
Mm.
didn't need recovery. What I needed was discovery. I needed to find
Mm.
a way to, like, why am I feeling this way? What is this deep feeling inside? Why do I feel like there's something missing? And I knew there had to be more. So after getting a sponsor and reading the big book of AA and doing the 12-step program, I left after several months and I ended up working with a coach. And that coach became the catalyst for me. He showed me things about me that I didn't even know existed. And he held up a mirror and he showed me possibilities for my life that I, again, didn't even know that I had it within me. And it was
Mm.
his words that said, Carrie, I believe someday you are going to be a coach yourself. And I think you're going to probably start your own business. And I think you're going to end up sharing your story with the world. And I busted out laughing and I said, you're crazy, dude. No, no, and hell no. That's never going to happen. And here, just a year later, I'm in, it's kind of started with me wanting to start a small group at my church. It didn't work out at the church and they said no to it because they had a recovery group. And I'm like, great, I don't want to be
Mm.
recovery. I want to do something different with the gray areas. And they ultimately said no. So I'm grateful for the church for saying no, because if it wasn't for them saying no, I don't know if I'd be here today. And
Right,
that's
you wouldn't
how,
have gone in a different direction to find something else.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's how the business got started. And I never thought, I didn't really seek out to start my own business. That wasn't really what I had in mind. But that coach, again, all good coaches can see for their clients into the future. They see the
Yeah.
possibilities. And I just couldn't see it at the time, but he did. And
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, I love the whole mirror concept. He showed me a
Mhm.
mirror of the possibilities, and I also love your term of the I didn't need recovery, I needed discovery. And there's
That's
so
right.
much in that powerful word of
Mhm.
discovery when we really start to look and find and understand more about ourselves and more about the world around us. And being those life learners, so to speak, I think that people like that really do excel to, continue to do great things because they're constantly learning. And constantly investigating who exactly we are, and more, even when you start researching on a biological level what our bodies are doing and learning what our minds are doing. And you had mentioned it earlier, but we live the same routine day in and day out. And you go to
Mhm.
work, you do the same systematic approaches every single day. And that is a conditioning that we have put ourselves in. And being able to break out of that, it first comes with the understanding that that's what we're doing.
Mhm. Yes, and you know what? You said it so perfectly because it becomes automatic for us, the autonomic nervous system. It becomes so programmed. Every habit that we have, we are programming ourselves to repeat it over and over again because our brain really wants to survive, not necessarily thrive. And it becomes so habituated, and we habituate ourselves when we do the same thing over and over again. So that's why when I work with a client, we focus so much on their habit change, and we look at their full schedule. I look at everything that they're doing throughout the day, and we start to make minor adjustments. When we start making those minor adjustments, we get that working pretty well. Then we start stacking on some new things to really help change their mindset. But a lot of the work that I do is about embodying a new identity, because what we believe about ourselves, April, is exactly what shows up outwardly with our behaviors. And this
Yeah.
is the number one thing that I really work on. And this is why I had a problem with AA, why it didn't work for me, why I didn't think it was a good fit, because I didn't want to say, "Hi, I'm Kari and I'm an alcoholic." It cut my soul every time I
Yeah.
said that. And I knew that I was an empowered person, that I wasn't powerless over anything. And again, this is me. I'm not speaking for anybody else, that has gone through the program. I have mad respect for the program itself. But for me, it just wasn't a good fit. And for a lot of people, it's not a great fit. So it's about empowering this new identity, taking on a new identity, and we start to match the behaviors to that. And that's where the work and the discovery piece really comes into play.
Hmm. Well, Carrie, I want to say how impressed I am initially that you had even gone to AA in your position, where you're right, that gray area is like, it's not an extreme of this, it's not an extreme of that. It's just like I may or may not, and I don't really understand. And I'm starting to realize that this may be a thing or maybe it's
Mhm.
not. But it's a pivotal point to access that within a person, because we all have gray areas in something. I'm going to go ahead and say that I believe that to be true.
A hundred
Um,
percent true.
yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, so there's, when we have that acknowledgement and we start to see that that's like the best time to reach it, because then it doesn't become an extreme, to where it's affecting more than just that one specific area in our life, because it becomes that domino effect, right?
Yes, and you know what? You just really remind me of something that is so key to say, that being in a gray area is a choice.
Mm,
Let me say that again. When
yeah.
you are in a gray area, you are electing to be there. It is a choice to remain in a gray area, whether it is with your relationship with alcohol, or in a gray area relationship with a loved one, or with your career, or with your health. These are all choices. When it becomes no longer a choice, which can happen if you stay in the grave for too long, that choice is taken away from you, which is another reason why I spend so much of my life every single day preaching this to people, because I want the word to get out that if you don't address the gray areas while you still have that opportunity, it will no longer become a choice, and you will be faced with so many other issues and other problems that will cost you dearly. I've seen kids taken away from their parents. I've seen divorces that cost upwards to $1 million to get through the
Mm.
divorce. I've seen businesses fail. I've seen severe health issues. I've seen it all. And I am like, not on my dime. I'm not going to let that happen. So I spent a lot of time really focusing on the importance of, while you have this choice, while you're in this gray area, let's do something about it. Make the decision while you're still in that space before it's too late.
Yeah. I can absolutely see your passion, and you're 100% correct. It can definitely have you going in the direction that you're going to regret
Mhm.
potentially, and that's not a good thing, not a good place to where you want to be. And as far as, our health and well-being, so much of my own
Mhm.
personal journey, I have come to that understanding and realization. That's where disease starts coming in, and you
That's
can't
right.
see it right away. I mean, the dangers of that gray zone area is that we can stay in it for so long.
Oh, yeah.
And the more that we stay in it, the more it continues to build. And
Mhm.
as it's continuing to build, it's doing some major internal damage, and which is reflecting externally as well. So we're going to go into our first commercial. And when we get back, Kari, I am excited to talk a little bit further, maybe going into the relationship realm. So
You got
stay
it.
tuned.
Are you a practitioner or a coach listening to this? If so, I would love to ask you, do you use hypnotherapy in your practice working with clients? And if not, would you like to? The power of hypnotherapy is limitless. And so often we experience our clients struggling to reach their goals. It's because they're coming up against their own brick walls and getting stuck. But you can help them through the power of hypnosis break through all of that, working with their unconscious mind to put the suggestions in, to have them taking the action to achieve the results that they want. They are thrilled with your coaching techniques. They're getting the results they want. You feel amazing because you are helping your client get the results they want. It's a win-win. And another win is that it's an added revenue stream for you in your business. So if you like the feel of helping your clients get the results they want, if you like the sound of that, then definitely reach out, Melissa at yourguidedhealthjourney.com, or click the Linktree link below for my Unlimited Power of Hypnosis class to learn more. It's a weekend designation program that I teach, valid in 42 countries. You write an exam after taking the experiential course, and you can be admitted to the American Board of Hypnotherapy and start using hypnotherapy one-to-one with your clients and have them achieving the results they want.
So, coming back to you, Kari, I want to talk a little bit about our relationship. So, now that we've come to an understanding that we all have gray areas in life,
Mhm.
period, it's just the way it is. And when we start to acknowledge them and understand them, we can take forward steps into addressing that. But what about when we find people in our relationships that we see have these gray areas and we care so deeply about them? What are some ways or tips and tricks that you can give
Mhm.
us to talk to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a tough question because I get asked this a lot, especially from someone that might DM me or message me that knows me on social, and they'll say something along the lines of, "Hey, Carrie, my wife or my husband or my sister or brother, whatever,
Mm,
is doing blank too much, and I'm really concerned."
yeah,
And while I appreciate the love that they have for their significant other or their loved one in their life, my response is always the same. You can support them in ways that will be supportive without being overly supportive and being part of the issue, but they have got to want to make the change for
yeah,
themselves in order to make it better. It will never happen by you wanting it for them. We can want
mm,
it so badly, but until that person is ready to take ownership and is willing to be committed to the commitment to make the change, it's really hard. But I will say this, there is one thing that you can do, and that is to have open communication. And I always recommend when you start a conversation with a loved one, especially if it's a hard conversation, if you know it's going to be difficult for you to express, I'll always advise to start off by saying, are you open to have a conversation with me, something that has really been weighing on my heart? When you open that way, you're opening the door for them to say yes or no. And if they say no, not now, you have to be respectful of that and come back at a later time. I still practice this with my husband. Just about 2 months ago, there was something I wanted to talk to him about. And I said, is this a good time for me to discuss something with you that's been weighing on my heart? And he said, not now. I'm really not in a place for it. Maybe later or maybe tomorrow. And respectfully, I said, okay. I said,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because you cannot, in sales, in the sales world, you can't sell to a closed door. You
Yeah.
can't have a conversation of deep value with somebody if the door is closed. It's only if the door is open. So that would
Right.
be a good
You're not
first place to start, is to get the buy-in that you can have the conversation and have this easygoing flow and listen generously and come from a place of curiosity. When you do those things through communication, you will always get a better response.
I love that. Listen, come to a place of curiosity. I like that very much. And I couldn't agree with you more. I like your response very, very much because I agree. It is just going to go in one ear and out the other. If somebody isn't ready to do the work. But I think it's beautiful to have that initial conversation or request that initial conversation because I think just like many of us, we may not be aware. And so if you see something and you don't feel like somebody's aware, having that gentle conversation, I think, is a really great idea. And, if they're open to it, and at least it plants that seed,
Seed.
right?
Yes, I was just going to say it plants the seed for
Yeah.
them. And even if that seed cultivates for 2-3 years, so be it. So be it. And that's exactly what happened for me, April. I had two people, two
Mm.
girlfriends, and my husband all plant seeds for me over a 2-year period.
Oh,
I'll never forget one of my dearest friends at the time, Kirby. I used to go get my eyelashes done by her, and she's local here, so shout out to her. But when I
mm,
would go to her on a Saturday morning, hungover, she said to me one time, she said, Kari, I have to be honest with you. I'm getting a little concerned
mm,
because every time you come in, you seem like you're not feeling good from the night before. And I know you love wine, but girlfriend, I love you. And there
yeah.
might come a time where you're not going to be able to enjoy that anymore. And when
Mm,
she said that to me, I was A, devastated, B, embarrassed, and C,
yeah.
I knew she was right. But it took more time. I had to come to my own enough. As much
Yeah.
as she wanted it, as much as my husband had said a few things here and there throughout the years, I needed to do it for me. I had to come to that own place. And that's my advice for everybody. You can plant the seed, you can be supportive, you can share your concerns with genuine love, be the eyes of love when you have that conversation, like show them how much you love them and you care for them. And when you
Yeah.
come from that deep heart place, they'll feel it. Eventually they'll come to their own decision. And that's what you can do best for them.
Yeah. And Kari, what I love about the work that you and others are doing, it's, when we look at being on social media all the time and the messages that we're putting out there, people are getting exposure to that. And
Mhm.
so there's these incredible positive messages for those of us who are brave enough to put them out, to
Mhm.
expose ourselves and to be able to reach many, many people. Because again, that's just like planting many, 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 many seeds, right?
Mhm.
And eventually it just becomes this beautiful chain reaction of the world healing, and which we
Yes.
all need. We're in this pivotal time where I think that we have had, unlike any time in history when we've had this world pandemic, and now
Mhm.
we're feeling all of the after effects of that, and this incredible time of having access to information across the globe.
Mm,
Like, unlike any other time, we can communicate with somebody in China or, just in
mhm.
other places right here, right now. And we weren't able to share that kind of information so quickly.
That's right.
And so we're able to support one another on this incredible global scale.
Yes, it is incredible. I mean, social media has been one of those tools that it's kind of like the internet in itself. And now GPT, right? And AI.
Mm,
It's like, it's both a blessing and a curse at times that we can have this information, but we also need to have that discernment on how we're using it and all the things. But I will share that I'm so blessed to have people all over the world that have experienced my work, and it's like unbelievable. Even though I
mm,
live in Richmond, Virginia, I can still touch someone in New Zealand, which is what just happened last month. I had a group client in my 30-day group course, and I mean, my gosh, the fact that I got to help this woman so incredibly much in her life and where she is now is such a joy. It's why I do the things that I do, and
mm,
to be able to have that reach is incredible. So yeah, there's
mm.
so many blessings to it, but we also got to be careful on how we're using a lot of these things.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Carrie, do you have some, this is where I get excited, because if you're able to share some examples of some stories of people succeeding, of achieving, and maybe a story or two of something that is more uncommon in gray areas that you'd be able to share with the audience.
Yeah, I'll give you. I have tons of examples, but one that's maybe a little unusual that one of my stories that I'm so proud of is I had a woman work with me about 3 years ago, and she was always an accountant in accounting, CFO, always in that world. And she was always taught to be that. Her parents were that, her siblings are that, everybody in her family was in the accounting world. So naturally, she became somebody who was in the accounting world, eventually became a CFO of a very large top Fortune 100 company, and broke off and created her own company. And I do this deep assessment with my clients. It's very proprietary, but we look at 13 traits. And a lot of those traits are cognitive, emotional, and behavioral traits. And what we saw
Mm,
with this particular woman is that she was not quite matched for the work that she was doing. There was
mm,
this incongruency with how her natural abilities and what motivated her emotionally was not being met. And this was a severe gray area for this lady. So
mm,
much so that during COVID, she started drinking, on a regular basis to deal with the stress of not only just COVID, but having this incongruency in her life. And it wasn't until we were able to talk that out, create some new ideas and plans for her, where she started to thrive. This is a woman that wasn't meant to be in the back room behind closed doors, just servicing clients all day. Her role is to be out front, going to get the business. So part of my plan with her
mm.
was, let's talk about how we can really build up a team for you. And now she has a team of 4 that does all the servicing for the clients, and she's the one who's out getting the business. So that's a good example of a gray area in a career.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I got one for each section, so I can tell you if you want, but you tell me where you'd
Yeah.
like to go from here.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So another amazing story, a gray area story, is I worked with another lady who was really in a loveless relationship. I mean, it was
Mm,
pretty severe. She tried and tried multiple times to save the marriage. There wasn't a whole lot of reciprocation on his part. And this is somebody who isn't able to use their voice. She was very quiet and introverted, very much of a people pleaser. How many people pleasers do we have out there?
yeah.
And instead of speaking up, she kept quiet. She was, of course, working 15, I'm not kidding, 15 hours a day on average, just so she wouldn't have to go home and deal with the silence that her husband was giving her. Well, finally,
Um,
she got to a place where she had a conversation. Nothing really changed. She had a second conversation, and she gave him an ultimatum. It came down to her getting her voice and saying, unless something changes, I'm out. Well, that conversation is what led for him to have a complete 180. But he noticed over that year that she was working with me that she had moved into her own power and was no
Mm.
longer going to be this passive little voice that didn't speak up. And when
And
she was
he needed that.
Yes. And their marriage was literally loveless. I mean, we're talking not even hello, goodbye, no meals together, no intimacy,
Wow.
nothing. And those two are like this now, thriving in their life. They,
Oh.
they're working at it. They still have work to do. That's a constant work, but my goodness, they are back on fire again. And it's a beautiful things to see. Things like that happen a lot. It's just the communication. It's really speaking up, being in control, embodying that new identity for yourself, and your behaviors match. So different situation, but same thing. And then with drinking, oh, I got a gazillion stories on drinking. I mean, I'll fresh in my mind. I worked with a gentleman a year and a half ago, multi-million-dollar business owner. Most of my clients do have multi-million-dollar businesses, and he is extremely active in his community. He does a lot of good work for his community, and he was drinking. He was drinking a decent amount, considered a gray area drinker, but definitely on the darker shade of gray. And he came to a place of, I need to address my drinking because it's starting to affect how I'm showing up for my team, my employees, my community. And he really wanted to get a hold of this. And after working with me for a period, I think we were together about 6 months, and then he did my group program. He really embodied this new identity. He was able to successfully give up alcohol. And just yesterday morning, I opened up Facebook. He had commented on a post that he just finished a 17,000 foot elevation hike. He just did, which is crazy, right? He did at 500 miles of riding his bike. He hiked that. He biked this big long trail, 500 miles it was, and he is now on a national board of directors, amazing organization, and he is thriving in his personal life and in his business, all because he made the decision to decide to give up alcohol, put it off to the side, invest in himself, work with somebody who was, ahead of him, where it can walk him through that case. Yes, me. And he was able to put all this into practice, and now his life is on fire. So this is another good example of, you make one decision that you've got to that enough and you're ready to make that change. Your entire life can change.
I love that when we make that decision, we're like, I'm ready. And speaking of, you do have a model that's called Decide.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for you? What does this acronym Decide look like?
Oh gosh. I love that word decide. And when I thought about how my coaching model works and I started putting the pieces together, I was like, oh my goodness, this spells decide. It was no coincidence. Thank you, God. Right. So the decide model of change is a process that I take every client through. And the D, and I'll go through it pretty quickly. The first D is having the desire to make the change. You have to have the desire, or we're not even getting out of the gate. So most often when somebody, by the time they get to that action stage where they're going to do something about it, they've already had the desire. So that's pretty much a gimme. The E is exploring your why. And this is so big. This is so big. I tell everybody that if your why isn't big enough, then you're going to have a hard time, because your why is your grounding force. It's what holds you steady. It's what you'll go back to every single time you get knocked off some way, shape, or form. Because guess what? When you are making a significant change, whether that's with a relationship, with a career, working on your relation with alcohol, whatever it is, you will have life come up against you and try to knock you off. And unless that why is big enough, you're not going to make it. So understanding that why, and it's always something to deep value. I often hear health, relationship, sometimes it's finances. It could be a number of things, but that why, kids, it has to be big. The C is having commitment to self. And this is more than just saying, yep, I'm going to do it. I want to do it. I want to make a change, right? No, It is having the commitment to the commitment. That means 100% all in. And I always say, if there's a backdoor excuse, even this much, if you have the door open this much, you're not going to make it. 98%
Mm,
doesn't count. You will always
mm.
find a way to slither out the back door and say, it didn't work, right? So being 100% committed to the commitment. The I is the identity shift. We have to be willing
Ah,
to put on a new identity. You have to be willing to do that. And that requires digging deep. This is where it's great to have somebody to work with you to figure that out, what that looks like, help you do the deeper work. Then we add in the second D, which is daily habits. Your habits absolutely reflect how you're living your life. So we spend a lot of time on creating good daily habits, good coping strategies, healthy strategies, ways to self-regulate, because guess what? Everything we do happens from our emotions and our feelings. And once we learn how to do healthy coping strategies, we could self-regulate ourselves even through breath, calm our nervous system into a nice, restful, relaxed state. We can then start adding in the really good habits that will edify you and will really improve your overall life. And the
mm.
last E, is everyday effort equals expansion. When we do
Oh.
effort, when we have that daily effort every single day, we naturally will expand as a person. We will expand our own being and will show up for not only ourselves better, but for those that we love and lead. And that is so important. So the decide model change is very special to me.
Ah, I love that so much, Carrie. I'm already envisioning people rewinding that, writing it down, embodying it, and you really hit on so many great key points. And I envision them visiting your website to find out more as well, which I definitely want people to know where that's at. So I'm going to mention it now. It's www.graytonic.com. That's graytonic.com. And so I want to just say that it is incredible. You did a really great job with that acronym. You hit so many powerful points. Now, did you come up with that on your own? Were you inspired by others? Are there people or books that you have read that really helped guide you on your own journey?
Yes, no and yes. So I came up with it on my own, the actual acronym, just based on working on myself, number one, and then working with clients. It just sort of evolved into, this is kind of the process I'm taking them through. And actually, the I originally was invest in self. And I decided to take that out and put in the identity shift, because the identity
Mm.
shift is so important. So it evolved over time to where it is now. But
Yeah.
as far as books and who are my mentors and who I look up to, my goodness, there's so many. We'd be here all day. You know, I mean, the greats, I love NLP. So who doesn't love Tony Robbins? And oh my gosh, all the greats, Jim Rohn, Les Brown. I mean, we could go on for days for the people that I look up to in terms of empowerment work and motivational work and really having that life change. Ed Milet's probably my number one favorite person on the planet. Someday I will be a guest on his show. And he is such an inspiration for me and for so many. And his show is amazing as well. But, just reading a ton of books. I'm a book freak. I have a ton of books over on my shelf that I just spend a lot of time reading and really pouring as much information as I can. And that's part of those daily habits that I
Mm.
really recommend, that spend 20, 30 minutes every day reading something of value, educating yourself, learning to advance with something with your mind. We obviously want to work out with our bodies. We want to improve that, but we also need to be educated. We want to be empowered, and there's no better way than to do that with books.
I love that you say that. So that leads into another question is what are some of the things, and obviously that is one of the things that you do on a daily basis, but for you, tell me some other things that you do every single day to really help keep your health in order.
Yeah, one of the biggest recommendations I can give to the listener or the viewer is not to look at your phone first thing in the morning for the first
Mm,
hour if you can. If you can give me an hour, that'd be amazing. And also at least a half an hour before you go to bed, no screen time. The reason for that is, especially in the morning, this is the best way I can describe it. The moment you pick up your phone and you start scrolling, whether that's emails, the news, or social media, what you're doing without even giving acknowledgement to it is you are giving all of your power to what's on the other side of that phone. So whether
mm,
it's an email that now you got to address the email and that's the only thing that's on your mind, or someone didn't like a post that you did, or somebody commented negatively, that
mm,
immediately affects your mood. And the worst thing you can do is to give your power away first thing in the morning. So instead, I recommend going into your own personal time, whether that is reading, whether that's exercising, journaling, saying positive affirmations, saying good things, visualizing how you want your day to be, stating daily intentions for yourself. Again, go back to intentions. When we pair intentions with awareness that we now have for ourselves, we become unstoppable because we take that intentions and we turn it into action, which are micro wins throughout your day. So having those intentions are huge, and being deliberate about everything that you do. And same thing with nighttime, avoiding the phone, avoiding all electronics, getting into a
mm,
good place, going into gratitude. Gratitude is the best thing you can do before you go to bed, because you're telling yourself all the great things that have happened to you and for you that day. And you're able to then implement that during your sleep. Believe it or not, your unconscious brain is going to remind you of those good things, and you're going to come up with some new ideas for the morning. And when you wake up, you're going to be more refreshed and in a better space. And of course, journaling, all of this is really recommended as well. And when we just do those little bit of tweaks, even if it's just the morning and night, not looking at your phone, moving into gratitude, having a little peace and quiet time for yourself, that by itself will change everything. You will set yourself up for an amazing day. It's as if you just put on a coat of armor, and now you're able to attack anything that comes your way. It's just going to repel off you like it doesn't even matter when you're able to really fortify yourself first thing in the morning. I'm a big
mm.
believer of that.
I love that you bring that up, and especially when you talk about how it affects us. So, yeah, we all could hear and know that it's not good to look at your phone first thing in the morning, but you're describing how
Mm.
it really has a profound effect on us. And we're energetic beings, right? And so what we put our energy into, it has that direct effect. So, thank you so much for sharing those things that you do, and the morning and evening habits, and how that can really have a great effect on us and set us up in a great way. We're going to move into our second commercial, and when we get back, we're going to share a little bit more about you and what you're doing now. So stay tuned. So, welcome back, Kari. I want to talk a little bit first. You mentioned something when you registered to be on the show about what does it mean to uh, what does it mean to be okay with not being okay?
Mm, yeah. Oh, the essence of how to move through an experience. So, anytime we're triggered or we feel under pressure or somebody cuts us off in traffic or somebody said something to us or we're
Mm,
desiring a drink and we know that probably we're better off if we don't have one. Anytime we're in those situations under tremendous pressure, know that it's okay to not feel okay.
mm,
It's all right that we feel that way. We are human. We are supposed to experience the range of emotions that we have. We have 6 core emotions, but we have so many feelings attached outside of those core emotions.
yeah.
And our go-to emotions as humans are considered the not so favorable ones. Disgust, anger, sadness, and fear are usually our go-to emotions as humans. So it's natural for us to move into one of those core emotions and then all the feelings that go with it.
Mm,
So the advice here is to be okay with not being okay. And if
yeah.
we're able to sit through it, if we're able to sit through the experience and ask ourselves some questions, and I have a tool for that, also another one of my methodologies called the SABER method, SABER. And the SABER is to say stop out loud. This is especially effective when you're really feeling like you're about to blow or
Mm,
you're really wanting a drink or someone cut you off of traffic or you just found out somebody was gossiping about you and it's not true and you're like blah, blah, blah. Your brain is just going crazy. You have these two incongruent thoughts. Your mind is just controlling everything and you could feel your heart racing and you're getting angry, you're getting upset and you're in that space. Simply say stop out loud, and when you do, something happens inside your brain. You actually give yourself some distance, you give yourself some space to just pause when you say stop out loud. Then the A is to acknowledge what it is that you're thinking about, bring awareness to what it
mm,
is that you're thinking about. And in this acknowledgement phase of looking at your thinking, 9 out of 10 times, more like 10 out of 10 times, what you're thinking is not always true.
mm.
Always not always true, right? Because
Right.
we always make stories up in our mind that make sense to us. So you can ask yourself, what am I thinking about? And is it true? Is it really true? Or could there be something else that is true? And
Right.
when we take ourselves through that questioning process, we can see that there always is something else that could be true. And a lot of times it's a story that we're creating without having all the facts and to give ourselves that moment of peace and grace in that moment.
Yeah.
The B is to breathe. This
Mm,
works with our
yeah.
minds and our
Powerful.
body together because you're able to breathe into it. You're able to move out of this fight, flight, or freeze response and into a calm place where you can rationalize what is going on and you can be really good with yourself. Sometimes you got to stay with that breath for more than just a minute. Sometimes it's a couple minutes of deep controlled breathing, doing box breathing or the 5-5-5 method or something that's really going to get you in a calm space. The
Yeah.
E and the R are the hardest for most people. They can get the S, the A, and the B, but the E is to embrace where you are. Give yourself the grace in that moment that you are
Mhm.
human. And you know what? We are hardwired to naturally get upset. We're naturally going to be triggered and we're naturally going to crave something. We're naturally going to move into these core emotions. It's who we are as humans. So to embrace ourselves, give ourselves a pat on the back and a little hug and some grace is important because that gives us the permission to be okay with not being okay. And then the R is to redirect how you were thinking by making a new empowering decision and moving into gratitude. When we move into
Mhm.
gratitude, We can't be in a protective state, what I refer to as a protective state. Instead, we move to an expansive state, and this will really help. So the saber is one of those tools that I recommend for my clients to use. And I love it because they use it as a verb. They say, I sabered through it today, Kari. I had to use saber multiple times. And, I like to look at the saber as like a weapon for your thoughts, that you can slay those thoughts, especially when they're tormenting you and you're in that space. It works every time. You just got to stay with the breath, sometimes a little bit longer.
Well, and it's so easy to be grateful afterwards because you're grateful for, actually doing that. Because essentially what you're doing when you start questioning is you're basically bypassing that emotion. You're giving yourself enough time, asking yourself
Yes.
all of these questions and going down and deeper into the why do I feel this way, etc. And you're done with the feeling and you have accomplished. So it's so easy to be grateful after that point because you're like, okay, now I can go do something else and concentrate on something else. I wanted to bring in a couple of comments. Keith said, hello, April and Kari. Keith is an amazing writer and producer, and he's definitely in the wellness arena. So he said, you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. I prefer grateful.
Oh, Keith, I love you already, my friend. Yes. So I say there's two states of being, right? And Tony Robbins talks about this. He calls it beautiful and suffering. I say protective and expansive, but we can't be in both of these states at the same time. We're going to ebb and flow throughout the day. But the goal is to try to be more in an expansive state where we feel creative and happy and joyful and at peace with ourselves. And we're in that state of mind. But, we're going to ebb and flow throughout the day. But gratitude, we cannot be in a bad place when we have immense gratitude. And so it's important. The one thing I want to say really quick, April, because this was important with saber, it's important not to judge your thoughts. Like, why was I thinking that? Because we're human. Remember, we're going to have thoughts that come in our mind that aren't always our own, that, they're coming off an old limiting belief that we have. It's creating these thoughts that are untrue in our mind. And we can even look at those thoughts as unintelligent thinking. We can look at them as false thinking because that's what it is. And when we just realize we're human and we're going to have these thoughts and we're going to have these feelings at times, it gives us the permission to not judge and the permission to be okay with not being okay.
Yeah.
And we can move through it so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, our thoughts are not really, that's not truth.
Yes.
And so we are so hard on ourselves. So I want to bring in, Kari, some of the photos that you get. This is really a highlighting moment for you because this is things that you have accomplished, where you have come. And I love to share this with the audience because you were in a place of, those gray areas, things weren't going well. Things weren't going well for you. You were lost in that limbo and the marriage. And this is your time to shine. So tell us a little bit about this photo.
Actually, that was really recent. That was just about a week and a half ago. That was taken in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was there for an incredible event with a company called Uplift Millions, and I was part of that program for a year. And we are all heart-centered leaders looking to really make some significant impact and be wealth circulators and really give ourselves to those we serve and those that we lead because it's that important to us. And it was just one of those moments where we were up there taking photos, and I was just coming off such an incredible high from immense work that was being done that weekend. And it was a good day. It was a really
Red
good
carpet
day.
and all. That's an awesome background.
Thank
really
you.
makes you feel like royalty.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
And then this photo I think is just beautiful. Now, this is your partner in crime that you have had alongside you for many years now.
Yes.
And I love this photo. I love your stance. I love your hand on his chest. And it's great. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Oh my gosh. Oh, this man is everything to me. This is Rob. Rob and I have been together for 36 years, married for 34. He's the dad of my two boys, of our two boys. And this photo was also recent. This was about a month ago in Costa Rica. And it was just one of those trips where I fell more in love with him, if that's possible, but also just being so filled. And I realized that my life has come so far, and I'm so grateful for what we have accomplished together. I mean, that gray area we had, you guys, was no joke. I mean, we almost didn't make it. And
Mm.
he also dug his heels in, and we worked. And we really poured ourselves into each other. And where we are today, I am so grateful. He's such a big, important piece of my life. He also loves to come live with me in my Facebook group, and people love him. Sometimes I think they like him more than me, but that's okay. But
Yeah,
we have a really good rapport, and we banter back and forth. And
that's
yeah,
awesome.
he's my rock. He is my rock for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, the support that when you have an incredible relationship, it just flows so nicely. And it's what I like to call a power couple.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
yeah, absolutely. And this is the book that you participated in and
Yes.
co-authored in.
Yes. Oh, this is another one of those, like, I was already an author once, but this one this one really means the world to me. Oh, yeah, so there was 27 of us, and we're all impact driven leaders, and we all contributed with writing a book of our version how we became limitless. And
Mm,
my particular contribution to the book was the importance of how much words matter, and what we say we become. And again, that goes back to the identity piece. And I share a very vulnerable, raw story. A couple raw stories in there that were, even when I was writing it, I was crying through it. And I
mm.
realized that when you have that much emotion, it must be in the book. So as much
Aw,
as I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to put that out there, right? It's the right thing to do.
yeah.
And I've gotten through about 85% of all the chapters. The book isn't meant to be read front to cover. It's just you pick one and you read it. But every
Mm,
chapter that I've read has just left me in awe. It is incredible to see the transformation and the inspiration that each one of these authors brought to the table. And I'm so proud of this book. And we are Wall Street Journal #1 bestsellers. So proud of that. We were on the list for, well, for sure a week. It was definitely a week long. I don't know if we stayed on there. We still might be on, but I don't know if we're still at #1. But we were on there for a while, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to be a part of this amazing book.
well, whoever did the art and even the title, I mean, it makes sense that it goes along with that #1 bestseller because it's something that I look at it and I wanna pick up. It piques my curiosity, it's beautifully presented, and
Oh,
so
thank you.
bravo for the people that were involved in that. I'll
Yeah.
bring in a couple of comments. Keith said, My friend Jamie Lula wrote a song, and the hook is, I have so much more to be grateful than to be sorry for.
Mm,
And he loves that mantra. If he has an off day, he
mm.
says it over and over.
I love
Very
that.
powerful.
I
I
love
do like
that.
that too. I love when people talk about different ways to express gratitude because there's many, many different ways. I had a guest on the show yesterday who talked about his experience of doing a gratitude practice each day. And he said, I kept saying I was grateful for the surgeries that I was having, and then I kept having more surgeries. So the universe wants to keep giving you more of what you're grateful
That's
for. So
right. That's right.
a very interesting thing to have on the forefront in that perspective. And Keith also mentioned about the partnership. My wife and I are celebrating 24 years
Oh,
today. It's awesome.
congratulations, Keith. That's wonderful. Good for you. 24 years is no joke, friend, right?
No.
So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I love
I
that.
want to bring in your contact again so the audience knows how to find you, Kari. Again, it's www.graytonic.com. Cool name, by the way. I have, of course, researched you a bit on my end for being on the Wellness Driven Life show, and you have so much awesome content out there, and it's
Thank you.
beautifully presented, and it definitely gives people tips and tricks. So you're a very giving person. And I love that about people who are sharing information. It's not just about, hey, come do my program. It's, look, this worked for me. It can work for you too. I want to share it. So I
Yes.
appreciate that about you. Thank you
Thank you.
for being a light in the world. And so, Kari, that being said, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, there is. And that is to question where you are. If you are feeling anything inside of your belly, I'm a firm believer that you feel something inside, those internal questions that you might be having, whether it is with your relationship or in a career or in a, with pardon me, drinking, don't ignore it. Don't
Mm.
keep shoving that under the rug, because when you do, it's just going to get worse. Be bold, take action. Don't be afraid to take action. There's so many things out there that can help you. And if you don't know where to begin, you can reach out to me. If I don't have the resources for you, I will point you in the right direction. Speaking of, I do have 2 resources that are free. I would love to be able to offer that to the listeners. One is, if you are concerned with your relationship with alcohol, I have a free mini course. It's a 4-video lesson. It's called Think Through the Drink. It's a way for you to ask questions. How much is too much? I go over the standard drink size, what that looks like, things for you to really think about and ponder. And that's absolutely free. It's on the very top of the homepage of my website. You can see the link there. And at the bottom of the homepage on the website is 10 ways to move out of stressful times. You can self-regulate. And there's some great tips in there. And that's a couple page PDF booklet. Absolutely want to give that to you as ways for you to, and Saber's in there, by the way, so you can research that. You can, I also included a mini little breath work section on YouTube. You can click that. That will really get you in a good Zen place. I do this breath work, a little mini session with a lot of my clients in our sessions. It really helps calm you in a good place. So there are free things out there, resources. Don't shove it under the rug. That's my plea for you. Life is too short to be stuck in any gray area. And you are so worth it. No matter what's going on in your life, you are worth it, and you will work through this if you want it.
Uh, See, oh, sorry, almost had you gone, but that's what I really, really love about you, Kari. You give so much resources through your own stories. And now that it's wisdom, you definitely share that. So thank you so much for doing that.
Oh,
And thank you for being an incredible guest on the
welcome.
Wellness Driven Life show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, April. It was such a joy to be with you.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. All right. Well, everyone, goodbye for now. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you later.